Permission to fire.
The Frigate Hessen is the most expensive piece of German weaponry. She's a high-tech giant with powerful guns and advanced location technology. On the Atlantic Ocean, the 255-man crew is performing a drill to practice perfectly deploying its onboard equipment in case of an attack. No one messes with the Hessen.
Of course, we try to avoid violent confrontations as far as possible.
This German frigate's crew is perfecting the world's largest naval exercise in tandem with 6 other warships. Its goal? To become a permanent member of the American carrier Strike Group 8. Strike Group 8 is the formation based around the enormous aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman. This exercise creates a strong bond between the warships.
We make decisions unanimously, which could be the difference between life and death.
The Hessen boasts one of the most advanced weapon systems in the German Navy. As a protector of military units, the specialized ship combats air and waterborne targets to uphold peace at sea. On the North Atlantic, an alarm is raised. A sailor on the ship's bridge has spotted 2 speedboats on the horizon. They're headed for the frigate Hessen, ready to attack.
Both boats are accelerating.
The speedboat is shadowing us port side. Both speedboats passing astern.
Crew to battle stations.
From a weapons standpoint, the speedboats are no match for the seaborne steel giant. But with rocket launchers, machine guns, and limpet mines at their disposal, the invaders can do some real damage. And besides, they're far more agile.
I've got a visual.
The sailors on the ship's bridge man the onboard machine guns to ward off the invaders as quickly as possible. The officers in the operations room are under extreme pressure. They aim their light naval guns at the speedboats, while the chief petty officer gives the final warning.
Turn away immediately or I will be forced to take action against you. Over.
Announcement, third warning has been given to both speedboats, no response.
The sailors must warn the attackers 3 times before they open fire on the speedboats.
Engaging.
Attention, fire.
Turning in port side.
On deck, aggressive knocking is a stand-in for the light naval guns' volleys.
Attention, fire. Destroyed.
The assailants turn back, and the atmosphere on the ship's bridge relaxes. In a real emergency, the speedboat crews would not have survived the Hessen's counterattack. Two days earlier, on the piers of the largest naval base in the world, the Norfolk Naval Station is located here in the American state of Virginia. This is the point of departure for all the U.S. Navy's activities in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the Indian Ocean. This military base is home port for 4 colossal aircraft carriers, as well as around 30 warships and submarine chasers. The German frigate is also moored here. Soon she'll depart. But before the Hessen can tear into the seas, she's loaded up with a month's worth of food. The seamen call this provisions rollout. But if it sounds like making sandwiches, it's actually hard manual labor on a ship with no cargo hatch. The crew must haul each box over 140 meters and down 3 decks into the storerooms. On the Hessen, provisions rollout takes a whole day.
We've got 800 kilos of fruit and vegetables, 11,000 bottles of water, and around 1.2 metric tons of meat and fish. Most of it's frozen. We have a magic rule that we can stay at sea for 21 days. That's simply because we like to offer fresh food as well. If we want salad and fresh vegetables at mealtimes, we can't store them much longer than 21 days or they'll go bad.
The entire ship's crew is gathered on deck. A total of 255 seamen and women serve on board the Hessen. At morning roll call, the crew receives orders and is sworn in for their daily duties by the executive officer.
You're going to have a lot of fun with us. The voyage that lies before us promises that.
Section 600, stand to attention. Dismissed.
As final preparations take place on board the Hessen, the USS Harry S. Truman sets course for the open sea. She's a mammoth of an aircraft carrier and the flagship of the American Carrier Strike Group 8. The Truman is escorted by 2 destroyers, 2 frigates, including the Hessen, 1 cruiser, and 1 attack submarine. On board the German Bundeswehr ship, the bridge crew enters the command deck.
Morning, Captain, sir.
The top dog on board is Commanding Officer Oliver Pfennig. He's the frigate's 6th captain and is in charge of the ship. In combat situations, he is responsible for tactical defense against attackers.
I'm responsible for the operational capability of ship and crew. That is for all 250 men and women on board and all the equipment, right down to the onboard helicopter parts.
In his 13 years as a naval officer, the frigate's captain has learned to remain cool and collected in any situation and to motivate his crew for upcoming missions.
We know what we're doing. I can understand if you're a little nervous. It's our first day in the formation, and we obviously want to get everything right. We trained for this. We know what it's about, and we'll get through it step by step. Any questions? Thank you very much. Dismissed to stations.
To stations.
That's the order for the powerful crew to put out to sea.
Command, start diesel motor starboard.
Starting engine.
This huge German Bundeswehr ship has a mixed motor system, which means it's powered by a combination of 2 10,000 horsepower diesel motors and 1 32,000 horsepower gas turbine. Now, the gangway and all land connections are removed. 2 tugboats work to haul the 5,800 metric ton heavy steel giant out of the harbor and into the channel outside Norfolk. From there, the Hessen proceeds to its tactical position for the forthcoming naval exercise in the Atlantic Ocean. Number 2 on board is the executive officer, First Lieutenant Franziska Friedrich. As first watch officer, she coordinates internal working procedures and navigates the frigate as per the commanding officer's orders.
The carrier is already 44 miles out, and we're now relocating to the Harry S. Truman's last known position. Once we're there, we'll take position beside the aircraft carrier and execute whichever duties are assigned to us.
Now, the Germans are part of an international aircraft carrier formation. homing in on the remaining 6 warships at the modest speed of 7 knots. The Hessen is an air defense frigate. 143 meters long and 18 meters wide, the Bundeswehr ship is equipped with aggressive weapon systems and state-of-the-art location technology. It has a draft of only 6 meters, allowing the high-tech frigate to operate in coastal waters too. After 2.5 hours, the huge aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman appears on the horizon. It's a floating city, around 330 meters long and armed with 49 F-18 fighter jets and more. The role of the German frigate within the Truman formation is air surveillance and anti-aircraft defense. Now begins the so-called Composite Training Unit Exercise, or COMTUEX for short. This extremely realistic drill trains the individual vessels to assemble in a tactical formation from which they can engage in combat. In addition to the Truman, the formation includes 2 high-tech destroyers, the Arleigh Burke and the Jason Dunham. The American cruiser USS Normandy functions as the carrier's own floating missile defense system. The Roald Amundsen is a Norwegian frigate. Together with an American attack submarine, she circles the whole formation like a watchdog, fending off attackers. Aerial reconnaissance is the Hessen specialty. But the German frigate is more than eyes and ears of the formation. She is also armed heavily enough that she can defend herself in a naval battle on her own, without support of other ships. With complex location technology, this high-tech warship is the pride of the German Navy. Her massive wide-range radar was specifically developed to detect stealth aircraft. This recon software allows the Hessen to intercept hostile signals and send up-to-date location data to the other formation members.
The Frigate Hessen is both the most powerful and most expensive weapon system in Germany. Why is it so expensive? It's not the weapons, but the sensors and radar systems we have on board. They allow us to monitor the airspace over Frankfurt and London as we're setting sail from Wilhelmshaven. So we can get a good overview which we can send to NATO or to the aircraft carrier.
Thanks to its rotating radar, known as Smart L, at the stern of the ship, the Hessen generates a huge surveillance dome with a radius of 400 kilometers. The Smart L can detect and trace up to around 1,000 targets at any one time. The frigate's diamond-shaped tower contains the fire control radar. Known as an APAR, or Active Phased Array Radar, it tracks enemy targets via a relentless beam of concentrated radio waves. The coordinates picked up by the radar system are passed on directly to the other weapons systems in the strike group, so that the warships can destroy enemy targets with pinpoint accuracy. The Hessen is also capable of underwater detection. The high-performance sonar system located in the ship's bow can keep tabs on activity in the ocean up to a radius of 44 kilometers. The operations room is where all information on the ship comes together. The clusters of radar and sonar data provide all officers in the formation with a comprehensive overview of events above and underwater. This means all of the strike group's warships can keep a constant eye on dangerous situations.
This is one of the most cutting-edge operations rooms anywhere in the world. We can see a topography, whether we're looking at an aircraft or a ship, even a submarine. The color scheme tells us pretty quickly if it's dangerous for our formation or ship, information which we then pass on. That way, we can all access the same information and make decisions which could ultimately be the difference between life and death.
A total of 7,000 sailors live and serve aboard the ships in the aircraft carrier formation. Before they can see real action, they must master around 200 Com2X war games. As part of the 3-week operation program, the carrier's fighter jets will take off and land thousands of times.
Dann geht es darum, dass man
Then it's a matter of identifying enemy aircraft, warning them not to come any closer, and, should it come to it, engaging them in combat.
diese auch bekämpft.
During the Gun-X shooting exercise, the warship's small arms and high-tech guns are ablaze and firing at targets on the water's surface. The strike group's command team decides the details of each scenario and loads an exercise map onto the vessel's monitors accordingly. The virtual war zone is projected onto the ocean, like a layer of film. The digital battle plan is then divided into several quadrants. Inside these boxes, the ships must obey specific rules.
Imagine the boxes like this. We arrived tonight from the north, traveled southwards, and are now located in the northernmost box of the two. Both boxes are around 60 by 80 kilometers large. Now we're traveling further south, so we can start our helicopter down here. This bottom box is around the same size and slightly different in shape. And now the top box is blocked for other exercises. Later, the vessels on different exercises will shoot over here, so that we can start our helicopter safely down here. We have around half an hour to get there, so we're sailing at max speed to meet the Norwegian ship, which will take our helicopter as soon as it started.
There are 19 military helicopters stationed on Carrier Strike Group 8. The multi-purpose chopper's main tasks include transporting special forces and hunting down submarines and aggressors on the water's surface. But the helicopters also carry supplies from deck to deck, using a heavy-duty cargo hook on the bottom to transport crates and cargo nets. Using this method, the huge choppers can deliver tons worth of food, weapons, and spare parts. Another of their specialities is saving comrades in danger. A hydraulic winch allows rescue swimmers to recover injured sailors from the ocean. Military helicopters act like the warship's extended arm on the open sea. Two Sea Lynx helicopters are stationed on board the Hessen. Specially constructed for deployment on frigates, they are 13 meters long and 4 meters tall. With their rotor blades collapsed, they fit perfectly into the two hangars at the frigate's stern.
All in position, chains off.
Using a chain hoist and a carriage, the sailors tow the versatile aircraft to its starting position. The British-made Sea Lynx Mk-88 Alpha helicopters have been in use in the German Navy since 1981. They are powered by two Rolls-Royce engines with a combined horsepower of 2,200 and reach a top speed of 325 kilometers per hour. The frigate's 18-man helicopter squad is known as Section 500. 7 servicemen make up the flying crew. During the operation, they'll spend 4 hours a day airborne. Military aviation is extremely dangerous, so the pilots and the flight technician, also known as operator, must wear special protective clothing. This protects them from both fire and cold, since the water temperature here is as low as 10 degrees Celsius. Without their padded overalls, the aviators wouldn't last long in the ocean.
These are our cold protection suits. Below certain temperatures, we have to wear these, particularly in water, to prolong our survival time in case we end up in the water. As a rule of thumb, the water temperature is equal to the number of minutes you have left. That's not a long time. If the water is 10 degrees, hypothermia sets in after 15 minutes, along with signs of exhaustion, shakes, and so on. We have a life jacket with a flotation collar, but before long you'll still lose consciousness and then just freeze to death.
There are 3 men in the heli crew. While the 2 pilots take on all tasks related to aviation, the operator is responsible for deploying weapons and for using the hydraulic winch when rescuing fellow sailors from the water. In a real mission, helicopters must be airborne in under 25 minutes. Today, the Sea Lynx crew will practice taking off from the small frigate deck 20 times. After takeoff, the pilots fly a loop around the frigate. Helicopter pilots must complete 200 flying hours and a demanding 1-year training course before being accepted into the Navy. Shortly after takeoff, the Hessen's pilots turn back port astern to land on the 300 square meter helipad. Now it's crunch time for the deck crew. The flight deck officer, or FDO for short, acts as the pilot's eyes and ears during landing. It's a big responsibility. He must use his feel for the ship's movements to decide whether a safe landing is possible. The FDO uses 2 signal flags to guide the pilot precisely onto the white landing zone. Touchdown. Next, they release the harpoon, a hook located on the underside of the helicopter's hull, which latches onto a grid and pulls the 5 metric ton Sea Lynx down onto the deck. Now, the FDO gives the signal to secure the aircraft.
The FDO takes care of safety down here. If anything should go wrong, whether it's a fire or someone getting caught, they'll have the situation under control on the flight deck so that no one is just running around confused.
Today's training is also hugely important for the pilots in the cockpit. They're racking up flight hours, which amount to precious experience. Training conditions like these are also hard to come by. At altitudes as low as 30 to 60 meters, the exercises mean pilots must fly head-on into a wall of sea foam, while the harsh Atlantic weather and heavy swells of up to 5 meters make flying on the high seas even harder.
Just like the desert or the Arctic Ocean, this too is a very particular environment for aviators. I have no way of orienting myself. Once it becomes gray on gray, the sea loses all definition. Then we can only rely on our equipment.
Pilots must also deal with the strong vibrations experienced during flight that put a strain on their backs. Frequent takeoffs and landings on the flight deck are especially damaging.
You can wave him over now.
The gear must be durable as well. During touchdown, the landing gear absorbs both the ship's movements and the huge weight of the sea links. To achieve the right levels of buoyancy and propulsion, the pilot always takes off and lands against the wind. To make sure no one loses too much weight on board, the sailors in the galley are working flat out. After a hard shift, the crew is first and foremost hungry. These guys work around the clock, cooking over 1,000 meals every day, all in a space of just 45 square meters. Today, the cooks are frying 60 kilos of steak with potato wedges and making plum compote for dessert. But not every dinner is as popular with the hungry Hessen crew as grilled meat.
It depends on what the crew likes. Sometimes when the crew changes, East German food is more popular. Like the Russian soup solyanka, which West Germans really don't like.
Cooking at sea is no easy feat. Even cutting vegetables can quickly lead to injury. So the galley has strict safety rules.
When you're using a knife, you have to move with the sea's swells. You have to be careful not to cut yourself.
Each of the 255 men and women on board enjoys 4 meals a day. Preparing these requires 6 cooks per shift to work the stoves. Lunch is at 11 on the dot, by which time the crew is already standing in line.
Morning, galley.
Morning, comrades.
Morning, Sarah.
During mealtimes, rank is irrelevant. At the table, everyone is equal, strengthening the sense of community.
There are no distinctions during meals. Officers, petty officers, junior seamen, non-commissioned officers, there's no special treatment. Because we're one crew, one ship, and we have to stick together. If we were to give better food to the officers than the lower ranks, for example, they'd be unhappy. And if they're unhappy, the whole ship will be too.
A new day on the high seas. Today's exercise is practice with the complex onboard weapons systems. The German frigate has 6 different defense systems to fend off threats. The 76mm gun on the ship's bow can fire up to 100 rounds per minute. Behind it is the Rolling Airframe Missile, or RAM for short, which is used to intercept enemies in close-range combat. 2 more RAM launchers are located at the frigate's bow and stern. If the Hessen is attacked by hunter-killer submarines, 2 triple torpedo launchers are activated. These allow the giant steel vessel to fight underwater enemies as well. 2 light naval guns on both sides of the ship tackle hostile speedboats. 8 Harpoon rocket launchers protect the German frigate from aerial attacks as well as enemy warships. For long-range targets, the Hessen has a missile system known as a VLS. Its 32 cells contain vertically stored highly explosive missiles. Section 300 is the squad responsible for weapons technology. There are 8 artillerymen on the Hessen. Now, they are preparing the weapons for the upcoming naval target practice.
Command Killer Tomato to water.
The sailor's target is this so-called killer tomato, an oversized 3x3 meter floating cube. Astern, the sailors throw the red balloon over the railing and into the Atlantic.
Announcement, Killer Tomato is waterborne. Let's go, let's go.
Another one of the Hessen's heavy-duty guns is this 7.5 metric ton heavy turret with its 76mm gun. This Italian-made Ottomalera gun has served for 40 years on ships like this one and can hit the killer tomato from a distance of up to 8 kilometers. Deep in the ship's belly is the armory, where all the Hessen's ammo is stored. These special high-explosive shells are launched at a speed of 950 meters per second. Each projectile weighs 6.5 kilos. For today's exercise, however, dummy ammunition is used. Each missile has a concrete tip at the end of its brass casing and is ballistic, meaning it won't explode on impact. Now the sailors load the large caliber weapon. The artillerists insert huge cartridges into the row of cylinders underneath the cannon. Before the exercise starts, the sailors take part in a special ritual. Touching this brass figure is said to offer protection. According to legend dating back 18 centuries, Saint Barbara is the patron saint of artillery. Next, the 3 missiles are loaded. In the operations room, the officers take aim at the killer tomato. The frigate must remain hot on the target's heels at all times. The sailors aim the turret directly at the red balloon. The Ottomalera can aim at enemies with extreme speed, rotating 60 degrees per second and achieving a full rotation in just 6 seconds.
Safety is on, cannon ready to fire. Permission to fire.
Artillery leaders, fire.
Fire. Attention, fire.
During target practice, the #1 goal isn't to destroy the killer tomato as quickly as possible, but for the sailors to learn how to safely operate the ship's complex weaponry.
Fire over.
Stop.
The killer tomato has been sunk. Now the commanding officer orders all guns on board to shoot freely. Once the crew has successfully completed the shooting practice, the sailors pick up the empty cartridges from the deck. But the crew can't rest easy just yet. Suddenly, 3 red objects appear on the Hessen's radar. The strike group command team has uploaded a new exercise onto the ship's high-tech computer system. Although the 3 enemy warships only exist on a screen, Commanding Officer Fennig must still formulate a defensive strategy.
We'll reduce speed so the Garnischen warship will overtake us and have to change course. We have no other way of forcing ourselves between the Garnischen warship and the aircraft carrier.
Understood, sir.
Good. New course 0.9.0.
The ship's company will try to cut off the attacker's route to the carrier, but the ships refuse to give way. They want to force a confrontation. Conflict is unavoidable.
Ship's crew to battle stations, protect high-value unit Harry S. Truman and fend off all threats.
Now, it's do or die for the sailors. Time to put on their safety clothing. The operations room is combat ready.
Crew fully at battle station, 7 minutes out.
The commander assesses the situation while reflecting on the optimal defensive strategy. Every contact with the enemy involves both internal and external combat. For external combat, that is, armed defense, the crew aims the ram launcher and the automalera cannon at the hostile ship. Internal combat comprises all actions taken on board the frigate. For instance, the officers' mess becomes a makeshift hospital. The enemy ships attack immediately, opening fire on the warship, even during a digital simulation. Everything shown on the operations room screens seems terrifyingly real.
Side 1, take cover, take cover. Bang, bang, bang. Impact port side.
Cover has been compromised.
It's a hit. The enemy has landed a blow right behind the operations room.
Fire in 9 Bravo 0, affected area antechamber.
In the operations room, the focus remains on external combat, that is, fending off the enemy. At the same time, these sailors get to work on rescuing injured comrades and extinguishing the fire. The enemy blow has destroyed the Hessen's most valuable weapons.
We've lost the VLS and ram aft. Ram forward is now crippled, and there's a fire in 9 Bravo 0. We need to put it out and repair the harpoon.
In the control room, the technical hub in the ship's hold, sailors log the extent of the damage on board. This interactive control panel allows the officers to monitor all fires and damage on board. This information is passed on instantly to the bridge and the operations room. The ship is in a disastrous state. Many sailors are injured or missing. The firefighters are attempting to manage a fire which has broken out right behind the bridge. Fires pose the greatest danger to warships. Packed with fuel, weapons, and explosives, the German frigate is a floating powder keg.
Move, 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 let's go!
In room 9 Bravo 0, the rescue squad finds 3 sailors with serious injuries. Their top priority is to rescue the men and bring them to safety. The burn victims are led through a fire door into a smoke-free room. Medics administer first aid and assess the extent of the injuries. This sailor's face has been badly burnt. His comrade is bleeding from an open arm fracture. He's screaming his head off in pain. This realistic scenario is raising the medic's stress levels. The aim of this exercise is to remain calm and not panic. But these wounded sailors are in need of serious help. They must be taken to the sickbay. A pair of medics lug this wounded sailor through cramped hallways all the way to the sickbay. A real feat of strength. While waiting for the ship's surgeon to arrive, the medics try to stabilize the victims. For now, they're safe.
All 3 casualties from the OHBR have been recovered to the VP. The worst of them has a K2 forearm fracture and must not be flown out.
For the last few hours, the company of the Hessen has been in an absolute state of emergency. But the ship's crew has the situation in hand. Injured sailors have been cared for, all fires are out, and one more COM2X test has been passed with success. Commanding Officer Fennig exits the operations room. At the end of a tough shift, every crew member has their own way of recovering from the stresses and strains of the operation. But the sailors' precious free time must also be taken up by more practical tasks. The sailors hand in their dirty clothes to the laundry. Different divisions, called sections, take it in turns to put one member on washing duty. The German frigate has strict rules about who can wash and when.
you. Enjoy. Thanks so much. Since there are so many people on board, we have a laundry rota. Every section has its own laundry day. 400 shares theirs with 500. Our senior NCOs, in other words the bosses, wash on Friday, the officers on a Saturday. That way there's no mix-up.
The male colleagues on board must observe an old military rule. Keep your hair and beards cut as short as possible. After duty hours, some sailors help to cut each other's hair. Others keep up their fitness for the harsh onboard routine. Personal space is limited here. The cabins are cramped, and it's not unusual for a 12 square meter space to be shared between 4 people. The Hessen contains a total of 300 beds spread across 68 cabins. Sharing such a confined space with so many others takes its toll on the sailors.
It changes you, for sure. When you're at sea, there are times when you're so introverted that you don't want to deal with anyone. And then there are times when you're euphoric. You have to strike a balance, which can be hard sometimes. Especially when you haven't had much sleep, it can be hard to keep calm when inside you're seething. But you have to keep your cool so you don't stand there looking like a maniac.
The 3 mess rooms allow the sailors to decompress. These spaces are a safe haven where the ranks can be among themselves. And if the commanding officer allows, everyone is entitled to 2 beers. Board games allow for camaraderie and some more private exchanges. Going for so long without their families is rough on the sailors.
When a ship is in active service, you see the people on board more than your own family at home. You have to accept that. You'll get close to some of the people sitting here at this table or in this mess room and confide in them about personal problems, worries, hardships, trouble at home, or I have this or that issue. Those then become things you can talk about.
You can see for yourself that living together works as well as ever. You sit down in the evenings, drink a beer, and have a chat. That's what binds us together. Yeah! You have to be kidding me.
You nasty beast.
Now that the sailors have recharged their batteries, the frigate must do the same. It's been 14 days since the Bundeswehr warship saw land. The fuel supplies are running low. For this maneuver, known in NATO navies as a replenishment at sea, or RAS, the frigate approaches an American supply ship. The USNS Arctic is a floating filling station loaded with enough tons of fuel to refuel all of the warships in the strike group. The officer of the deck gives the order for the maneuver.
Exercise type, wet replenishment, refueling, slow, 420 cubic meters until full. Watch as chains and rings off, pant legs in your boots, only touch ropes and cables using gloves. Does everyone have gloves? If there are no questions, to stations.
The frigate approaches the island of supplies from starboard quarter, stopping 50 meters away, dangerously close for a ship of this size. The Arctic can replenish 2 warships at once. Now she's refueling an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, while the Hessen takes up her position. To establish a connection with the supply ship, the sailors use a converted machine gun, which they use to fire a heaving line, called a bola, onto the Arctic's deck.
Attention, bola, fire. Nice.
Bullseye. Now the sailors retrieve the heaving line. At its end is a special rope, itself attached to a huge steel cable. The aim is to construct a zip wire between the frigate and the supply ship. To achieve this, the steel cable is secured onto the supply ship's RAS mast. The Hessen also has a RAS mast, which the sailors use to fasten the other end of the cable. This multi-purpose mast can transport fuel, food, and even people from deck to deck. The cable weighs several tons and is pulled over the vast chasm between the ships by means of a winch. Receiving the steel rope is extremely dangerous. The sailor must access the outermost edge of the deck, meaning a safety harness is required. He pulls the cable on board and attaches it to the frigate's mighty fuel nozzle. Then the RAS mast pulls it tight between the two ships.
On one.
Meanwhile, the giant fuel hose is attached to the RAS mast of the opposite ship. Officer of the deck, Luce, gives the go-ahead, and the winch pulls the fuel hose from the USNS Arctic onto the Hessen. This hose can transport tons of diesel oil onto the frigate in a short amount of time. The hose's coupling slides along the steel cable and latches onto the Hessen's fuel nozzle. The sailors call this process securing.
Secure. Attention, the hose is secure and attached.
Over the next 40 minutes, around 450,000 liters will flow out of the Arctic's umbilical cord into the German frigate's fuel depot. Meanwhile, in the control station below deck, sailors monitor the fuel replenishment on the display. They divide the fuel evenly among the different fuel depots on the ship to avoid a weight imbalance.
Down here in the control room, we can monitor the filling pressure here on the ship. And using various valves, we can divide the fuel among the different bunkers. We have 11 large supply bunkers, which can store up to 660 cubic meters between them.
Now the sailors are pumping 11 cubic meters of diesel per minute through the fuel hose at high pressure.
We're at 70 cubic meters.
The two ships are moving narrowly abreast and at exactly the same speed. This is important as it ensures the hose will not tear off. At the same time, it's a big risk. If the steel giants get too close, the flow velocity of the water between them will rise while the water pressure sinks. The ship's hulls would be sucked towards each other and collide in what's known as the Venturi effect. The fuel depots are now completely full, and the frigate cuts the cord to the supply ship.
Attention, all lines are off board.
All connections to the Arctic have been cut. The sailors close off the railings and dismount the huge fuel nozzle from the RAS mast. With a full tank, the frigate is now ready for the next 9 days.
Man overboard! Man overboard!
Man overboard! Man overboard! Man overboard!
When this alarm sounds, it's a race against time for the entire ship's crew. No one knows if it's a drill or a real emergency. Immediately, two rescue swimmers spring into action. One of them climbs into a lifeboat, while the other prepares to dive 8 meters down into the ocean in case the victim is nearby. Luckily, this time it's only the twice-weekly drill.
We also chuck a practice dummy into the water for the lifeboat to fish out.
Man overboard!
We're also practicing fishing the dummy or possibly a real person out of the water with the rescue swimmer on the gunnel.
Auf dem Seitendeck einmal aus dem Wasser zu fischen.
Attention boat!
A total of 40 crew members take part in the sea rescue. The boat is made up of a 3-person rescue team, together with 1 swimmer and 2 helmsmen. A hydraulic crane lowers the dinghy into the water. The complete procedure, from the first alarm to landing in the water, should take only 5 minutes. Because the choppier the seas, the less time it takes for the casualty to be carried out of sight. The second rescue swimmer is now on the plank and ready for action. This will be his first time jumping off the frigate into the ocean. It takes a lot of nerves.
Don't look down, okay? Look up and keep your body tense, like this.
The swimmer is only allowed to jump off the downwind side of the warship. Otherwise, he would be sucked under the hull instantly. He'll remain attached to the Hessen via a safety line at all times. As soon as he hits the water, he must use all his strength to swim away from the frigate.
The hard part about swimming away from a ship is overcoming the current. Of course, our swimmer is also attached to a safety line, which pulls him back the more I let it into the water. That means he has 2 forces to overcome, the current and the traction weight from the line. It's extremely physically demanding. So this is the maximum distance a rescue swimmer can go.
If he hasn't reached the victim at this point, he has to turn back. Hypothermia is the greatest risk for rescue swimmers and anyone who falls overboard. By now, the boat crew has located the casualty.
He's been in the water for 9 minutes.
The rescue swimmer is sent in. Even water temperatures below 25 degrees Celsius are insufficient for the human body's heat production system to maintain its vital temperature of 35 degrees Celsius. Now the rescue swimmer pulls the practice dummy, affectionately known to the sailors as Oscar, over to the lifeboat. Heaving the 1.8-meter tall lifeless dummy out of the ocean and onto the dinghy is hard work. Meanwhile, the second rescue swimmer has reached the side of the ship. After he's put on this orange life belt, his comrades lift him aboard using a crane known as the gallows.
Order, get the gallows.
The sailors haul their comrade onto the gunwale by brute force. To become a Navy rescue swimmer, sailors must undergo scuba training. They can dive as deep as 31 meters without an oxygen supply.
This swimmer has a very important role to play because he's the ship's last chance if we can't launch the lifeboats, which is the worst case scenario.
The officer of the deck guides the lifeboat leeward, meaning downwind of the warship. In nautical jargon, the terms windward and leeward describe the position of the ship in relation to the wind. This makes sure that the returning boat doesn't push into the ship's side and capsize. Once the dinghy has been hooked, the hydraulic jib crane lifts the rescue team, complete with the accident victim, 10 meters up the side of the ship. The lifeboat swings heavily from side to side, especially during the last few meters. The sailors load unfortunate Oscar onto the stretcher and carry him down to the sickbay as fast as they can. Medical care aboard the Hessen is not too different from a clinic back home. With the ship's doctor, paramedics, an anesthesiologist, surgeon, and dentist, the medical crew is equipped to deal with all kinds of accidents and illnesses.
Coughs, colds, sore throat, sometimes diarrhea. Those spread quickly on board since we're so tightly packed together.
Each area of deployment has its own set of illnesses, which sailors aren't prepared for. Special vaccinations give the crew immunity against unfamiliar pathogens. This sailor has a swollen ankle. The sickbay has its own X-ray department to identify bruising and fractures.
How does this feel?
That's starting to hurt.
Doesn't look serious, but to be sure, let's get an X-ray. I'll tell your officer and then we can go from there.
If the ankle is broken, the sailor will need surgery as soon as possible. The Hessen's well-equipped medical station means that even emergency operations are a possibility. But now the sailor must try to keep still for the X-ray despite the ship's movements. The results are in. Luckily, he won't have to go under the knife.
So in front is your tibia and behind it is the fibula. Everything is where it should be, don't worry. We'll just dress and bandage it. You'll keep your leg up and we'll check later, okay?
Sounds good.
Great, let's do that.
The medical crew works around the clock in a space of just 53 square meters. The Hessen's sensitive recon technology makes the frigate the eyes and ears of Carrier Strike Group 8's warships. Now, it will be put to the test in a complex air defense exercise. For the ship's recon specialists, this air defense exercise is the most important in the whole operation. Sailors must pass this test if they are to serve in real combat.
The Normandy is located at 2.4.0, 16 miles away.
Another command from Pivo. Harry S. Truman is heading for course 015 at 10.
As soon as the exercise has begun, the frigate's radar system detects echoes from fighter bomber jets. It's the Truman's Super Hornets, standing in for the enemy. The Smart L radar instantly passes the data to the Hessen's operations room. These jets are under the command of the German frigate's fighter control officers. Normally, these Air Force officers coordinate the tactics of up to 10 Super Hornets, directing them as close to the enemy as possible and giving the final orders to open fire.
We command these aircraft over radio. We're also authorized to issue them with appropriate orders and send them to a CAP, Combat Air Patrol Station, a predetermined point where they will complete their assignment and await further instructions.
Two of the fighter bombers attempt to evade detection. Some jets are equipped with radar jammers, which can conceal their location or send false information. But the intruders have not escaped the officer's attention.
That's an unknown, unidentified aircraft.
As long as he doesn't change his altitude, he's not a threat.
Not for long. The F-18 pilots take direct course for the carrier group, aggressively accelerating and lowering their altitude. This is a clear sign of hostile intentions.
Give warning to both our contacts to the north.
Commanding Officer Fennig has to make a quick decision. The crew warns the aircraft 3 times not to approach. Then, things get serious.
Front of the force will issue final warning to dingbat, strength through.
Overflight at 6,000 feet.
Descending?
Descending, no response, Captain, sir.
This is a group air defense exercise, which is usually carried out like this. The group is surrounded and attacked by either simulated or real aircraft. Each individual ship has a radar display, so they can evaluate which areas to check and who is friendly, neutral, or hostile.
Upon detection, the radar can monitor several hundred aircraft and missiles within a radius of 160 kilometers. It can also launch its own missiles, which can accurately strike jets at supersonic speed.
Negative, I repeat, 289.
In a real combat scenario, Commanding Officer Fennig would give the order to engage now. This would send data to the American destroyers and the guided missile cruiser. Within seconds, they are ready for combat and able to deploy defensive missiles to seek and destroy hostile aircraft via the APAR radar.
Okay, that's fine. Did we get Trano down there?
The destroyer's vertical launch systems allow them to fire a wide range of missiles, which have one thing in common: a strike rate of 95%. For the approaching fighter jets, it's too risky. They turn back. In the galley, the cook is on baking duty. At 8 p.m., just after frying steaks, the petty officer starts his shift, which will see him kneading dough for 20 loaves and around 300 rolls of bread. He won't finish until 5 a.m. To match everyone's taste, 4 different types of bread are always prepared.
That tastes perfect, great.
With sacks of flour from the supply bunker weighing 25 kilos, the baking shift is hard work. But working with wholesale flour poses an even greater challenge.
When you're baking in the galley, you're literally turning shit into gold. That's the biggest challenge. It would be boring to have the best ingredients.
But the ship's cook doesn't just prepare carbs for breakfast. He must restore the company's morale with calorie-dense foods.
I also make pastries, cakes, and sometimes tarts for Sailor Sunday. I like to mix it up.
On so-called Sailor Sunday, the crew enjoys particularly good food, a kind of Sunday dinner. This tradition has taken place on a Thursday for 300 years, because ships rarely set sail on a Friday, leaving little to do the day before. Even today, the ship's company indulges in coffee and cakes to boost morale. Elsewhere on the frigate, 2 men climb through a hatch into a dark room. They seem to be looking for something. They shine their flashlights over every nook and cranny, using a special map to guide themselves and making a list of what they see. This detective duo is in the ship's switch room, where all the Hessen's electronic equipment and security systems are stored. A supervisor prepared the room in advance as a test for the sailors. The 2 crew members must identify a total of 10 hazards amidst the darkness.
Okay, Übung ist beendet.
Okay, the exercise is over. Which faults did you find?
Was habt ihr für Fehler gefunden?
Einmal das Licht aus ist.
Firstly, the light's out.
Right.
Cable, bullet hole starboard side, then we've got another wire breakage.
DKMP ist 04.
Just one?
Ein.
Ein, ja.
Hier so ein Kabel.
Okay, ja.
Ja. Dann. Hier ist auch noch eins.
Yes.
Das ist ein zerstörter Raum.
It's meant to simulate a wrecked room, which the sailors enter and scour for faults, which we've prepared. Today we placed 10 faults in different spots.
The
The next two can come up now.
Now, another team must scan the room for faults as fast as possible. These so-called wrecked room exercises simulate the effects of, say, a missile strike on board. The aim is for the sailors to recognize any resulting cable ruptures, loose ammo, or water leaks immediately. Every section leads their own inspection rounds in accordance with their particular requirements.
We check the whole ship, looking out for things like jet propellant 10 fuel around missiles and torpedo fuel leakages. If they see a white powder, that will be sodium hydroxide, which specific sailors are specialized to deal with.
The used fire extinguisher indicates that there was probably a fire here.
5 minutes left.
The inspection squad uses a 5-point plan to record where the fault is located, which measures are needed to address it, and when the equipment in question will be fully functioning again.
End of exercise. Tell me, which faults you found?
Lights out, I'm going home.
Yep.
Defective cable in CU3.
Yep. You missed one fault. There's water on the floor by the radio transmitter.
The second crew has more experience, but that didn't stop them missing more faults.
That's leaked out. I noticed that the younger sailors looked more carefully because they stuck more closely to the map in order to see where to go. Therefore, they found more faults than the other team, whose experience seemed to work against them.
The exercise is repeated as many times as possible so that the sailors don't miss any damage in a real battle. In a space as cramped as this, it's a real challenge. The whole ship is a giant maze, with 255 people and 64 cabins spread over 6 levels. The different sections are connected by narrow halls and tight stairways. The only level covering the entire 143 meters from the bow to the stern is the Zulu deck. Room 5, Zulu 1, houses the ship's technical control room. Just like a regular household, the sailors here do everything they can to keep the floating colony going.
This is the ship's temperature monitor, which controls every room. It allows us to see if, say, an arms storage room is too hot, so we can immediately step in and cool it down.
The sailors in Section 200 are also responsible for the sanitary systems on board, maintaining and cleaning the Hessen's 42 showers. For reasons of hygiene, all onboard sanitary facilities are made of stainless steel. This way, germs can't gather on the shower walls. It's particularly important for the 43 toilets, which use a vacuum flush like those used on trains.
Before you use the bathroom, it's important to do a test flush to clean out the pipes and check the vacuum is working. As soon as I press down, the toilet flushes and I can do my business.
The feces land in this vacuum tank, which has a holding capacity of 9 cubic meters.
The excrement then goes into the sewage treatment facility, where it's decomposed by microorganisms.
The sewage only ends up in the ocean once the waste has been fully purified. The 255-strong crew creates other kinds of waste too. As much as 5 cubic meters of garbage goes into the frigate's trash dump every day.
This here is 4 days worth of garbage. It's getting pretty full. It will reach where the crates are here and be completely packed.
A glass shredder and a trash compactor help reduce the volume of the waste so that as much garbage as possible can be stored. It doesn't take long for the dump to fill up. 200 cubic meters of trash could pile up before the ship can dispose of it at the next harbor. A full dump means an empty storeroom. The sailors in the supply crew check what's needed for the next delivery. The provisions are almost finished. The main issue is a lack of water.
Our water problem, is this really all we have left?
We have a few more back there.
How many do we have in total?
1,100.
1,100 bottles, okay. So we need a complete restock.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Keeping tabs on the ship's supply levels is the job of Section 400. They are the first port of call for all the ship's daily needs.
We supply everyone with food and supplies with the ship's supermarket, hardware store, and hospital all in one.
Choppy seas have turned this room upside down. Frozen goods, after water, the most important provision on board, are stored here.
When we put to sea, we had 11,000 bottles of water on board. Now we're running low. It got hotter, people have been exercising a lot, so we've used up a lot of water.
The supply crew has assessed all of the stock levels. Time to restock. Just like fuel, provisions can also be delivered at high sea. The choppy Atlantic makes the maneuver difficult. Commanding Officer Fennig briefs his crew on the complicated procedure of pallet replenishment. The crew uses information about the wind and water conditions to calculate the appropriate course and speed required to reach the supply ship.
Absolute wind at 27 from 1.6.0. Flying course 1.6.0 at 15.
The German frigate approaches the island of supplies parallel to the Norwegian warship. The crew on deck lowers the railings for the pallet replenishment. It's an extremely complex operation, which requires both ships to maintain an exact distance from one another, neither too close nor too far. Even Commanding Officer Fennig leaves the bridge to help out on deck. Now, both frigates are beside the supply ship. The 3 vessels are sailing through a special corridor designed by the Strike Group Command Team at exactly the same speed. This RAS quadrant is the only area where the replenishment can take place. Should the ships risk exiting the corridor, the operation will be called off immediately. The waves between the ships are meters high. Still, the operation must go on.
Report to the bridge. Attention, Bola, fire.
Just like in fuel replenishment, the crew secures a rope on deck before pulling the heavy steel cable onto the frigate's supply mast using the massive winch. Before long, Officer of the Deck, Luce, has passed on the good news to the bridge.
Zip line is secure and attached.
The Hessen is ready to receive the delivery, but suddenly an alarm sounds. The ship's horn sounds 5 times. This is an order to cut all connections immediately.
Prepare for emergency detachment. Hammer, where's the hammer? Bring it here. Ready for emergency detachment?
This special hook can only be removed with a mighty hammer blow.
Let it go, let it go. Watch out, it's slipping. Let slip. 4, come on.
Letting the last rope slip takes 13 men. No one knows why an emergency separation was needed, but they know it has to be done quickly. In the worst-case scenario, lives could be at risk. But amidst the chaos, something goes wrong. The end of the cable is caught in the pulley.
Cut, watch out.
Cutting the cable is the last resort.
Attention, all lines off board, emergency railing up, fall in.
The emergency procedure took the crew 5 minutes from the first alarm to the cutting of the last line. The relief on the sailors' faces is clear to see. The Norwegian frigate crew also managed to cut its connections in time. Both ships can now move away from the supply vessel. The reason for the termination is given via radio.
The reason for the separation was our location. We were at risk of entering another country's territorial waters where replenishment is illegal, so a US destroyer ordered the emergency separation.
As soon as the ships veer too close to the edge of the RAS zone, the operation has to end. But the Hessen still needs to be restocked. After a few hours, night begins to fall. Still, the pallet replenishment must go ahead. Officer Luce hands out glow sticks for the sailors to attach to their uniforms. Even the end of the heaving line on the converted machine gun is alight. This way it's more visible. Officer Luce takes a head count. In such low light, it's especially important to keep tally.
We need one more glow stick. We're now undertaking a night replenishment. Sunset is at 6. Keep one eye on yourself, the other on the ship. Always watch what the next person is doing. It's getting pretty dark quickly. We'll turn on the lights above. Everyone has a glow stick. They cannot go into the water. Why? Someone could think it's a person and shout "man overboard."
These differently colored signal lights are for communicating with the supply ship. The dwindling light means the frigate must pull even closer towards the seaborne supermarket. The bola shooter enters the dangerous area around the open railing and fires. The sailors reel in the connecting rope from the bola line so that the cable winch can haul a harness over to the Hessen's RAS mast from the supply ship. On the Hessen, the crew uses signal lamps to indicate the optimal direction and height to pass over the steel cable. Then the so-called zip wire reaches the deck of the frigate.
Attention bridge, zip wires on deck.
The Hessen's crew uses this huge hook to link the zip wire to the RAS mast, connecting the two ships tightly together. Replenishment at sea is a demanding operation and requires real experience. Each individual step must run like clockwork. Next, the two ships' crews construct a cable pulley over the ocean, which lies between them. This requires a mighty guide roller, known as the white block, which the frigate's crew attaches to the supply mast. Now, goods can be sent in both directions.
Attention, white block on deck.
Officer of the Deck Luce is guiding the first delivery pallet aboard. It crashes against the side of the ship, nearly sending the boxes into the sea.
Careful, careful, careful. A little more, more. All's well that ends well. Secure.
Fest. Ja, fester sein.
This yellow pulley carriage, known as a crab, carries the pallets on deck, where they are lowered carefully in front of the RAS mast. One by one, the sailors haul the supply boxes below deck by hand. Meanwhile, the supply ship has already hoisted the next pallet onto its RAS mast.
Attention, second pallet coming.
Now the ship is reeling in pallet after pallet over the zip line, a maneuver made harder by the poor light and choppy seas.
Yep, good, all good, secure. Signal that it's secure. Let it down carefully.
Delivering provisions requires the participation of everyone in the ship's crew. Each box must travel 140 meters and down 3 decks to reach the Hessen storerooms. Fresh fruit is especially important for the sailors, as the high levels of vitamin C and ascorbic acid are essential for the protection of somatic cells. For a long time, perishable foods didn't feature on Navy ships' menus. The result? Seamen would suffer from scurvy, a potentially fatal vitamin deficiency. The provisions are all loaded, and the pulley carriage is back on the supply ship. It takes 3 men to release the massive guide roller from the German frigate's RAS mast.
Oh, sehr schön.
Very nice. Let go, let go. Tension, white block going back, signaling to receive.
The last hook is cut from the steel line with a hammer blow and flies off deck with a jolt. Now, the frigate's crew has successfully completed a night replenishment.
Morning, KFU here. Please announce that the canteen is open. Over and out.
A full storeroom means there's plenty on the shelves of the Hessen canteen.
It's like Herzblatt, the German dating show with the sliding doors.
The ship's very own mom-and-pop store opens 3 times a day. Here, the sailors can buy whatever makes them happy. Not just liquor and cigarettes, but also gummy bears, instant noodles, and cans of German beer. The store counter rakes in an average of €1,000 a day, also selling military-themed souvenirs, like this varsity jacket.
The canteen is an amenity run like a business, for the crew, by the crew. We take 10% of the profits that come in, and that money goes to the crew for leisure activities. For example, if we want to put on a barbecue, a secret Santa, or a beer night. Basically, it's all for the crew.
In just 7 months at sea, the ship's canteen made some €20,000 in profit, enough to buy a new projector in the mess room. A new day of naval exercises. Several hundred nautical miles off the Florida coast, the German frigate continues to accompany the formation surrounding the huge aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman. On today's program is an imaginary canal passage. This requires the ships to get into formation and pass through the imaginary waterway in convoy, keeping no more than 1 kilometer's distance from one another. The ship leading the convoy through this narrow passage is the Hessen. The operation zone hovers over the real chart like a hologram.
What's carrier speed?
10.
Carrier's at 10.
Yes, new course 230.
New course 230. Great. We need to make sure to keep our speed down if the carrier's only at 10.
Aye, aye, sir.
Up until now, the formation has been under control. But suddenly, the German ship runs into trouble.
We've got a rudder failure. Rudder failure, rudder failure. Signal that we are disabled.
Yes, sir. Code Delta.
The frigate is disabled. This sailor has been ordered to hoist the Delta flag, which tells the other ships in the formation to keep away due to limited maneuverability. Chaos breaks out. the emergency rudder crew rushes to the control system. In such close proximity, the ships could collide fast. The comrades enter the engine room with caution, carrying a fire extinguisher. But the rudder failure was not caused by a fire.
Input is destroyed. Switch to the pump. The fuse is blown.
Yes, sir. Input destroyed. Switch to pump 2. Fuse blown.
To bring the heavyweight ship back under control, manual steering is required. 2 sailors set up the hydraulic rudder head's emergency pump.
Emergency manual control is ready.
Attention, engine room from the bridge. Starboard 5.
Starboard 5, let's go.
The 2 sailors pump with all their might, moving the rudder at the ship's bottom centimeter by centimeter through the current. The frigate has a turning radius of 570 meters, so steering it by sheer elbow grease makes for slow work. 10 back-breaking minutes later, the sailors have set the Hessen back on course.
Stop. The rudder's at starboard 5.
Announcement, rudder at starboard 5.
But it's not long before a new course is set.
Order port 5.
Order port 5.
The sailors immediately start pumping again. They need to alter the rudder by 10 degrees. In other words, turn the weighty warship to the left. Meanwhile, the deck crew passes on the charge of course to the other strike group members. If the radio system is down, these signal flags help to convey messages to the neighboring ships. A type of semaphore, this alphabet uses 40 different signal flags and is consistent across NATO members. The flags are used to communicate danger, changes of course, or distress signals. For more than 200 years, seamen have used these optical signals for ship-to-ship communication. Multiple flags together are read from top to bottom. In order to send messages over long distances, every flag is assigned a letter in Morse code, while a massive signal lamp helps by flashing light signals. Using this system, sailors can send up to 8 words a minute.
Morse code and semaphore signals are actually pretty easy to learn. It's simply rote memorization. It just takes a few days. Some signals are important and need to be passed on quickly. Of course, the fastest way is by radio. But when we can't use our radios, we're left with Morse code and semaphore. Once we couldn't make out the other unit's Morse signals, so we used semaphore. It takes a long time, so you have to get a move on.
Speed is also crucial for the sailors in the engine room. Until the electronic steering system is repaired, they must continue to pump the rudder a port.
Announcement, rudder at port 5, amidships.
The rudder's back up. We can't drop the signals. Command from watch officer, lower the disabled signal.
Code Delta is withdrawn and the signal flag is lowered. Below deck, the sailors switch back to autopilot. The auto-navigation system binds the ship's course to the compass information and is one of the most crucial and most stressed systems on board. Also under a lot of strain are the Sea Lynx helicopters, which unsurprisingly require a lot of money and time to maintain. Like a high-tech computer, precision tools must be used for the flight squad to inspect every centimeter of the aircraft. The fighter jets must be able to endure thousands of takeoffs and landings. Any wear and tear on the engine or rotor blades can be a flight safety risk. The landing gear also absorbs heavy impacts. Even the salty Atlantic seawater can damage the Sea Lynx by eating into its components, which have to be treated with a special anti-corrosive agent. Optimizing the helicopter's lifespan and performability requires the sailors to maintain and service the aircraft at regular intervals.
We have different maintenance schedules. Some are set according to the calendar, whereas others are based on the number of flight hours completed. Finally, we look to see if all the helicopter's parts are fit for action. Over here, we check oil and fuel levels before each flight. The whole process takes around 2 hours.
The Sea Lynx also boasts a delicate technology known as dipping sonar, an almost €300,000, 86-kilo depth probe which can detect hostile objects lurking under the water's surface. It requires weekly maintenance work. This flight technician is checking the sonar system's sensitive control equipment from inside the helicopter.
The sonar system is made up of the component parts of the winch or reading machine, which we use to lower the probe up to 330 meters deep. This is controlled via the display, which shows me any contacts, and the steering system, which lowers and raises the winch in and out of the water. If we detect something, such as a submarine or a surface contact, we notify the mothership by radio.
Once all systems have been checked, the pilots test the Sea Lynx in action. The FDO launches her into the Atlantic sky. The dipping sonar extends from the bottom of the aircraft, secured to the huge winch. The sailors use a 440-meter-long cable to drop the dipping sonar into the ocean. Once submerged, it can spy on its underwater surroundings within a radius of 35 kilometers. The helicopter monitor's complex underwater survey is forwarded directly to the German frigate. The Hessen uses its own sonar system for submarine hunting, but its location range is limited to 44 kilometers. When this doesn't suffice, the onboard chopper comes in handy by expanding the searching radius using the dipping sonar. In the Hessen's operations room, the captain and his crew survey their screens. They have just received the sonar results from the Sea Lynx and can now pass on any signs of an attacker.
The helicopter has received a contact position and reported it to us in here. When we have an underwater contact, we can send them a ping, which returns an echo and shows up on our screen here. That beep which we just heard, that's the echo which we use to locate the contact. Once we have the echo, we know there's definitely something in the water. Next, we have to see if its motion coordinates are consistent with a submarine. Then we could identify it as such.
Submarine hunting is the Sea Lynx's main job. Her high-tech sonar system allows the German frigate to react preemptively to potential attacks. How this scenario would unfold, however, must remain secret. A new day dawns on the Frigate Hessen. Her time at sea is coming to an end for now. Today's exercise is docking at Mayport. The bridge crew is planning exactly how the hulking warship will navigate to its pier and discusses possible danger zones lurking in the narrow harbor facility with the captain.
Here's the plan. Let's take both tugboats and make a full turn in the harbor so that we can push into the pier. Our mooring site is starboard, Delta 1. The danger zone is this little edge astern, where the next mooring starts.
wo der nächste Liegeplatz dann anfängt.
If anything comes up, report it. If you have questions, ask them before we do something we haven't agreed upon.
Wind, weather, and water level are all crucial to the decision. So are the position and speed of the ship. These nautical parameters decide whether and how the crew will dock the giant warship safely at Mayport.
For now, all the conditions are perfect. The harbor isn't too tricky, the weather is great. It's just a matter of staying as focused as possible so that we can navigate properly when it comes down to it.
Now a tugboat approaches the frigate port side, bringing a pilot with her. Pilots are usually experienced captains who know the territory well and are able to safely lead a ship through shallows and past obstacles. The pilot also knows the best angle for the crew to navigate the warship towards its pier. What's more, he knows the harbor crew, who he keeps informed over radio about each maneuver the bridge crew is planning to guide the Hessen into safe harbor. Officer of the deck Luce is also ready for action as he guides his crew to tie the tugboats onto the side of the ship. Soon, these boats will ease the steel mammoth into harbor. It takes 6 men to attach the tugboat to the ship by sheer force.
More. Watch out.
Announcement, full connection established.
Now, both tugboats are secure. Centimeter by centimeter, they haul the gargantuan warship towards the pier. The dock workers are already waiting ashore. The deck crew gets ready to throw out the Hessen's mooring lines. As soon as the thick rope is tied around the steel bollard, the sailors use a motorized winch to pull the ship these last few centimeters to the pier.
Yeah, tension.
Finally, a gangway is attached by the port crane, and the ship's company can touch down on American soil. In accordance with Old Navy tradition, the captain is the last to disembark. Until the final roll call, he remains responsible for the ship and his crew.
Good afternoon, crew.
Good afternoon, Captain, sir.
Mission over, at ease. We didn't let a single day, not even a single minute go by, without showing the American carrier formation what you are capable of as sailors and as a crew, and what the Hessen has to offer. Crew, attention.
The high-tech frigate Hessen has a long voyage behind her. She set out into the Atlantic from Norfolk Naval Station with a lot to prove. The 3-week military exercise saw the German frigate put her heavy weaponry and advanced location technology to the test. The 255-man crew withstood a range of endurance challenges to prepare them for genuine combat on the high seas. Both captain and crew proved themselves to be among the most reliable naval forces in the world. After this stopover, she'll be back on active duty, returning full speed ahead to the USS Harry S. Truman to carry out more tactical missions together. Highly modern and highly dangerous.